That analogy is very dear to me once I learned about it. If you hadn't guessed, the three sisters in the Native American tradition are corn, beans, and squash. So the way that works and the way that relates to what I'm talking about today is kind of what I'm learning from plants, that taught me getting along with people. I don't always get along with my two sisters. I guess in that story, I am the corn, I am the oldest sister. I do happen to have a green cape and long gold flowing hair, with benefit of probably a little L'Oreal these days. But yeah, I guess I'm the corn. So can you guys still hear me? It feels like it's kind of, okay, good. Yeah, so the corn really serves as a natural trellis, in this case for the youngest sister, the bean. She's the green one that can only crawl at the beginning, but she can use that trellis to naturally, grasp onto something and grow higher because the corn is there, planted in the same spot. The bean is actually able to fix nitrogen from the air that neither the corn nor the squash is capable of doing, yet they love that and that helps them grow. So the bean can send that down to the roots for the other two sisters to feed on. And then the squash acts as kind of a natural living mulch to keep the roots cool for the other two sisters, and also kind of helps with the weed suppression. So I just thought that was a really cool thing. And in permaculture, I've been studying permaculture now for a little over a year, so I call myself a permaculture student. Just show of hands, is anybody familiar with that term, permaculture? I figured in a cool church like this, a lot of you cool people would know that. Permaculture is a portmanteau, which is just two smashed up words together, for permanent agriculture, which has to do obviously with plants, but also just with permanent culture that has to do with people. And while I love gardening, I love growing food, I have been a lifelong student of, how do people get along? How can we work together? And so in permaculture, permanent agriculture and otherwise, I've just found the intersection of my, endless learning that I can watch plants and see how they work. So that Three Sisters example, that's known as a plant guild in permaculture. So those are plants that work together, they thrive together, actually planted in the same space. They don't compete for nutrients, they do better. And when we think about, what we're fed our whole life, it seems like with the American ideal, it's, John Wayne, the cowboy, self-sufficiency, kind of, making it on your own. And think about corn in monoculture, an entire field of corn. You get one beetle that can, figure out a way to infiltrate corn, and they can take down a whole field, or fill in the blank. Any kind of monoculture crop can actually be taken down much more easily than a guild with these plants that are put together very intentionally and actually support one another. So that's kind of what permaculture is about. When I signed up for my permaculture studies, however, I knew that I didn't want to just work a piece of land and design herb spirals and things like that, though those are really cool. There are other people that I feel like that's their thing and they're drawn to that. What I wanted to do was make a people garden of Northwest Indiana. And basically the way that came to me to actually do the design was through a time bank. So I'm just curious, another show of hands, has anybody heard of time banking? Oh, you guys are so cool. You know all of this. But so time banking, for those of you that don't know, is a way that you establish a community currency that's based on time rather than money. And so I believe here within your congregation, you already do some kinds of banking of services and trading of services. So you probably, is that true? I think Janet French told me a little bit about that. Okay, so you've got that going on. But then what happens when you need a service that's not among, those people that sit here? It might be a good time to be networked to another, larger social permaculture map, right? So where you can map the resources. We use software to do this, which is not all that important. The software is such a minor part in how we do what we do, but it's called time and talents. So if Marty, you play what instrument is that? Auto harp, okay. So if Marty said, you know what, I really, really enjoy playing the auto harp, I'm willing to do that, today, or I'm willing to do this for a party that somebody was gonna have, or whatever. She would earn hours for that. I myself love hunting morel mushrooms, and this is how happy I was to be here today. This is prime, mushroom hunting day today. The sun's out. And, many mushroom hunters will not share their secret spots with people, but this is how much I love the Time Bank. I will show the members of the Time Bank how to hunt mushrooms. I will show them my special spots. So is there anybody that enjoys that? Anyone? Anyone would like that? Cool. June's a taker. So June, what kinds of things do you like to do? Sing? Awesome. So June likes to sing. She might be willing to sing, backup for you or solo at a party or, who knows. But the idea that I saw when I started mapping all the untapped resources that people have, that they just maybe don't feel like they build a website and say, hey, this is what I do for a living, but I enjoy doing it. Or how many of us feel comfortable asking, even though we know June loves to sing and we know that Marty loves to, play many, many instruments, we wouldn't feel right just to come up and ask them to play without being willing to honor them with some kind of payment. Well, in 2000, I became a Reiki master and teacher, and when I learned about the Reiki healing energy, one of the parts of my training was that you had to value the energy exchange. Because, you might think, well, isn't it more spiritual just to give energy, give healing energy to everybody? How could you withhold that? That seems very not spiritual, if you're hoarding that energy or you're not giving it freely. But my wise teacher said, it's not even just for you, it's for the person receiving that energy, because they need to reciprocate in some way. They need to feel valued. They just can't receive value from you. There has to be an energy exchange. So the thing that I love about the Time Bank is it recognizes that everybody, without exception, has a gift that can be shared. And so many of us are wired to be volunteers, and that feeling, how good that makes you feel when you volunteer? Think about the people that are always receiving. Don't you think they might want to feel that feeling too? Don't you think they have skills or gifts that could be shared? So it's a way that, lets us map those resources and, share. So how does this relate to plants? You've already been given the example of, the three sisters, and that's still kind of a man-made example. But I'd say my biggest teacher is really just walking through the forest. I love gardening. I'll probably never stop growing tomatoes. But I also love wild edibles now. Does anybody go foraging or wild crafting or anything like that? Okay, I love it. I can't get enough of it. I used to think of being in my garden and pruning tomatoes and planting tomatoes as being, in nature. But it's a pretty well-tended nature, right? I mean, the plants are kind of in rows and that kind of thing. Just last night, I was watching the news and it said we might get down into the 30s overnight. I, perhaps unwisely, planted tomatoes already. That's how excited I was to get it started. But what was it, 70 or 80 last weekend? It sure felt safe for tomatoes, But I had my tarp, and so I had to go out, put the tarp over the tomatoes to protect them. They need a little bit of coddling. You know what? One thing I'm not worried about at all is where my elderberries are going to come from this summer. Nature just kind of takes care of that. I'm moderately worried about where my morel mushrooms are going to come from just because there's a lot of competition. It's not that they're not being produced, it's just I might not be the one to find it. But nature has these regenerative, food systems that in our day and age, so many of us don't even see that as being valid as food. We just do all of this work to make our food or to grow our food or to earn money, to buy our food, when with a little bit of knowledge and, I think just a great, beautiful walk through the woods, you can see what nature is doing for you. So besides morels, I'm just actually a fan of all mushrooms because of what I've learned about them. Just being in nature and spending time in the forest. Okay, you're going to be like, who is this crazy lady up there? Did we do a background check on her psychology? But I feel like I sometimes get some messages from the plants that are around me. And it actually has been shown by a couple of different people that I know from TED Talks. Suzanne Simard, I don't know if anybody's heard of her. She's a professor of ecology in British Columbia. She's got a great TED Talk about how trees communicate with one another. And so Have any guesses how trees communicate with one another? It's through the mycelium network that's below ground. And this mycelium network, which is, when we think of mushrooms, most people just think of the fruiting body that we see above ground, but the mushroom in its entirety actually includes this whole vast network that is below ground. And many people say our own internet is really patterned after mushrooms. They are actually capable of transmitting electrical impulses sent by trees, and especially a certain kind of tree called a mother tree. So this weekend, as we honor the earth through Earth Day and Mother Earth, I think throwing a little something out there for the mother trees is good too. But the mother trees are actually capable of identifying their young and send them nutrients by way of roots as well as this mycelium network. So I just thought that was the coolest thing. We're probably all familiar with that, Bible verse, consider the lilies of the field, they don't toil. I kind of boil that down to don't worry, be happy, Nature's got this. If, God is going to be concerned about clothing them and all their, finery, we're probably going to be okay too. And that's how I feel when I walk through the woods. I just think, the mother tree does not hoard resources, in her cupboard. She is just sending out nutrients through the soil to whoever needs it. Probably primary, her own little saplings, get their share. But so how does that fit back to time banking? Okay, since you guys didn't freak out too much about me saying that I get messages from nature, I'm going to go ahead and tell you this. On January 1st of last year, I was taking my first hike of the year up at the Indiana Dune State Park, and there's this special oak tree that I always see, and I think it looks just like a bear. It's got little nubs attached to its sides that I think looks like little tiny bear arms. And this tree is just like daring me to hug it every time I go by. I can't walk by this tree without hugging it, so I do. And I've begun to bear hug my bear tree. And soon after doing that, I started to receive just short little messages. And it surprised me and it didn't. If I guess you're taking the step to hug a tree, it's maybe not all that much of a leap to start getting messages. But at first they were just little words or, maybe two-word phrases, something like that. But they really did seem to have original thought. They were things that I had never thought of or considered on my own. So you could say it's just a human slowing down enough in nature to unleash some creativity. Honestly, I don't care much which is true. I just know that I've been able to unlock some very interesting, thoughts and some insights by spending time in the forest. So in any case, one time the tree said, I'm just going to say the tree said, I give the tree credit, "Come, unity, community." And I just thought that was great. I had never once thought of breaking down the word community as two words, an invitation into unity. I thought it was good. I wrote it down. I remembered it, kind of let it go. There were other little nuggets like that. One time the tree told me that the Chinese actually invented acupuncture based on the tree's sap running up what's it called, the phloem and the xylem? Yeah, exactly. All right. So clearly, I'm not exactly a scientist. So I did, I kind of knew the existence of this stuff. I Googled it, though, later to figure out, is that really true? I still haven't been able to find it on Google. But I didn't make this up. This was not in my head. I hugged a tree, and the tree, took credit for acupuncture. So fact check me. I don't know. It's going on in my imagination, whether it's true or not. But it actually seems kind of reasonable in a lot of ways. So this was all of our, kind of getting to know one another period that led up to the big ask that happened on January 1st. On January 1st, when I hugged this tree, it just felt different. It almost was like, do not even think of letting go. I got something to say. Not easy for me to talk as a tree, just do not let go. And I want to say, too, this was like at 8 a.m., and the only substances I had were like a strong cup of black coffee. So in case you're wondering, it wasn't like after copious amounts of wine or anything else, So no, it was like, normal weekend morning, coffee only. But it felt like this pulsing. It almost felt like, I closed my eyes and I could almost just see, like a light show or something. It was really wild. And it just said to me, I want to know if you will bring bear medicine from the forest out into the world. And for one thing, a tree had never once asked me a favor of any kind, so I immediately said yes. Secondly, I let go, stepped back, and my husband, he's used to this, he just holds the dog, pretends, that there are people coming by, and he's like, oh, don't worry, she does this all the time. But he's like, so what did the tree say today? I'm like, the tree wants me to do this bear medicine. And he's like, well, what is that? I said, I have no idea. I had no idea. I'd never heard of bear medicine. So again, I went back to Google, my best friend, thanks mushrooms for the internet, maybe not Al Gore. But also, I'm on this Facebook group called the Sisterhood of the Talking Trees. And so I thought if anybody would know, maybe these people would know. And they just basically said, with bear medicine, what you're looking to do is not heal an individual person, as you might with a Reiki session, working with somebody one-on-one, but to do something that would heal at the community level. And so that very day, on January 1st, I just kind of put it together that A, I was supposed to study permaculture, so I signed up for a permaculture class that day, and B, that I would do it through time banking, because I knew that time banking would allow us, like the mother trees, to release our nutrients, to release our resources into the network, into the community, so that we didn't have to be these lone rangers. We didn't have to be hoarding. We didn't have to have our gifts go unrecognized or unshared. And it went pretty well. So I think the tree so far has been a great career counselor as far as I can see. I have never been happier, and the people that I've been able to, work with and interact with through the time bank, I think that they are very happy. And I know there are some countries that actually put a premium on measuring their gross national happiness instead of their gross, national product. I majored in economics. I realized that, money comes in pretty handy, as long as some people demand being paid in money. So it's not as if I'm suggesting that we replace money with time only, but think about what a richer experience it would be if every year you got to do a few things more that you really love doing, and you got to take off your plate a few things that you didn't like doing that perhaps your neighbor or a friend or somebody sitting right in this room really loves to do. So if there's anybody that loves cleaning house, I want to make you so happy. Let's talk after this. If there's somebody that's always wanted to learn wild edibles, I'd love to make you happy by sharing that knowledge. And so it goes. We weave community. I don't think I'm going to try it now because it could get a little unwieldy, but if anybody's up for it during the fellowship time afterwards, I actually did bring some string where you can create this community web. When Kim asked me, what's your title? I just made it up on the fly. I'm a community weaver. Okay, yeah. But it really is. You may think that you know what the community has to offer you, but you really don't know until you put an ask out there. And it's a lot of fun. The way this works, and we can just kind of imagine that we're doing this, is I say something I'm willing to give, and just like we did real briefly with Marty and June, thanks for volunteering, they were able to take that ball and run with it. So if we had the string, I would be throwing it to Marty, she would throw it to June, we'd be in a circle, and we weave that pattern. Then you go in reverse with what do you need? And so many people are good at giving, you get to the needs and they're a little shy. But just because, like I told you before with the Reiki energy, it's very necessary that you do receive, because you've got to balance out, if you're not asking for anything, then you're not allowing somebody else to give. And so it really has to go in a two-way direction. Anyway, can I ask you guys to work with me here for a minute and just close your eyes? I want to read a little something that this is my vision, and I'm wondering if you like where this takes you. What would it look like if everyone were doing the work they loved, what they felt called to do? What if everyone had the opportunity to build their skills and then apply them toward making their communities whole and beautiful? And now I want you to imagine a tree, and just imagine how the tree works in the forest doing exactly what they do well, and they're not expected to be a mushroom, and they're not expected to be a bird, and they're not expected to be anything else. They just all work together. and you can open your eyes. But what we've described is a mutual aid network. So that's how the forest works, and that's how the time bank works. And I just think it's a beautiful vision, and it's not awfully difficult. I think it's something that we used to do as common sense. And unfortunately, I think just with all our transients and our attached garages with the door that goes right down, I know I'm guilty of this. I ensconce myself into my house, and then I have neighbors. I'm aware I have neighbors, but I don't really talk to them. We're Facebook friends, but yet we don't use our front porches very often. So I know I myself am guilty of this. I want to restore this type of community, but we're going to have to remember ourselves, to the earth and to one another, I think, to really restore this vision of what can be. But I think that we have everything that we need. There's a book that I really love called Enough that was written by a fellow time banker out in Portland, Maine. And it's basically just rediscovering the enoughness that already exists if you're willing to receive and willing to give outside of the way that we've come to be conditioned. So that's really about all I have for you today. I just want to ask you to consider hugging a tree, and I think it's about time, both in the time banking sense and in the words of the Hopi elders. We are the ones we've been waiting for. The river is swift. But I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I think it's time to just release our aloneness and embrace that oneness and who we are in the greater good. So thanks for having me, and I'll be around afterwards. You guys have been a great crowd.